Y'all doing it. Okay. I miss you. I did that. Wow. So up today, but my life coach, she's sitting me out there walking, which other way that being home sitting on my butt. Yeah. It's another life. So fucking the dog. Yeah. Good afternoon, good evening. Good afternoon. One of those days, one of those. Where's the dogs? Okay. Where's the dogs? She's watching the house. Ah, good. I'm not seeing the page numbers. Sneak up here and introduce myself. I'm John.
Hi, John. Nice to meet you. I know I've seen you around town. Hi.
Pleasure.
John, are you the John?
Yeah.
The John. I did. Somebody asked me, "Do you know John?" I was pronounced it. And I do actually.
Yes, you did.
Check.
What, right?
Are we ready to? Are we ready to?
Oh.
Recording in progress.
Yeah.
Made about notes, based on all on this page.
I see. Which email you want to use?
Jay first came that you.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the October 14th, 2025 City of Trinidad City Council meeting, where we are reconvening from closed session with nothing to report. No action was taken tonight. In closed session, start with the flag salute, the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
No.
So we'll start with the agenda for tonight. Council, any questions or changes that you'd like to make to tonight's agenda? Any suggestions? All right. I'll go to members of the public. Are there any members of the public that would like to suggest changes to tonight's agenda? None, then I'll bring it back to the council for a motion. Is there a move
Motion to approve the agenda. I'll make that.
Okay, Bryce moves to approve, Jack seconded, all those in favor? Aye, so the agenda passes unanimously. We'll move on then to approval of of minutes. We have minutes from July 8th, August 6th, and September 9th. And those were in the packet. And are there any, I've reviewed them, have we all had a chance to review them, and are there any questions or changes from the council?
Just commendations to
Yes.
Dave for getting it.
Yeah.
Big lift.
I'm prepared to July and September, but since I wasn't there for the August meeting, I think from that.
Okay, and let's do that. If there are no questions about these, I'm going to go to public comment first. Any questions or comments from the public on any of the minutes from those 3 meetings I just mentioned? Okay, and then back to the council. So what we can do is we'll need to do these individually. So we'll start with someone, a move to approve the July 8th.
Move to approve the July 8th.
Okay, and I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we need a motion for August. I can do that. Move to approve.
And I wasn't there, but I can still
Right.
vote.
No, you would abstain.
You can say
so-
if you want. I mean, it's better if you think.
Yeah.
You don't know what.
It is kind of optional. You can read the minutes and, maybe you watch the video or, yeah. So I will move to approve August 6th minutes.
Second that.
Jack seconds. All those in favor? Aye. And Katie, did you want to abstain or?
Wait, we're doing August?
Yeah.
August.
I'm sorry, that's the one.
That's the one you want.
I'm abstaining on this.
So do we have a quorum?
Yes, we would still have a quorum because you were here in August. Carrie was here.
What was the one?
Well, okay, let's start over, guys.
That special one you call. That was-
August 6th.
That's August 3rd. So apologies, I forgot that was the one that neither of you were there. So we did have a quorum because we had Councilor Varela there. I think what we're going to do on that is we are going to, what are we going to do? Because we don't have a quorum for,
In view of the usual
Departure.
procedural,
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and vote yes, even though I wasn't at the meeting.
okay. If you're comfortable with that and you've read them, I think I'm comfortable with that. So we will
A lot of
have,
confidence in that they're prepared.
yes, and I read them and we were there. So, okay, so Jack and I are first and second. We have all in favor, Jack, myself, and Bryce, and Katie abstain.
Do I need to abstain?
You can do
I can
whatever you
either.
want. You
I
can do
don't
either.
abstain.
Okay, so Katie's going to approve as well, having read those minutes. And we just need to note that it was just Jack and I and Carrie, I guess. Apologies for this procedural, kind of complexity here. Okay, September 9th.
I'll move approval of the September minutes.
Okay, Grace.
Second.
And Katie seconding, and then all those in favor. And then Jack's. So all those in favor, we've got 3 of us. Does that make sense over there? Okay. And then Jack Tuttle is abstaining because he was not in that meeting. So we've just had 3 meetings where it's just been, a little different in terms of the council reps. So thanks for everyone's patience. And staff, are you good with all of that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Okay, then we are ready to move on to council reports and committee assignments. Who would like to start tonight?
I'll start. I have nothing to report.
Okay.
And this month, the HCOG meeting is on Thursday, so I'm not meeting yet, but I have nothing new to report.
And
Yeah, I have nothing to report on my meeting.
okay. All right. And unfortunately do, but need to get to my, or fortunately do, but need to get to my notes. I'm going to do a few quick things, meetings I attended, and then I want to get to the town hall paint colors as part of my report out. So I attended the LAFCO meeting on September 17th, and LAFCO approved a reconsideration to exclude all Humboldt Redwood Company parcels from the Neeland Fire Protection District annexation. So it was kind of a pullback on a prior decision that LAFCO made to expand the Neeland Fire Protection District and including these timberlands, these commercial timberlands. And Humboldt Redwood said, no, you can't include those lands in this agreement per California state law. So the LAFCO board, which I serve on, was hesitant to do that because we wanted all parties to participate in the fire protection agreement. But what we decided to do was, fight this battle more at the Sacramento level than at the Humboldt County level. And so, change the law versus trying to kind of attempt to win a court case. I also participated in the mayor selection committee meeting on September 24th. In that meeting, Arcata council members were appointed to the board of Access Humboldt, also to the Humboldt County Redevelopment Oversight Board, and I was appointed as the vice chair for the mayor selection committee. And then the GTA, or Greater Trinidad Area CERT team, we had a leadership meeting on September 25th. We met via Zoom, and we solidified plans for a block party to be held on October 26th from noon to 3 p.m. And there's handouts in the room for those who are interested. But that'll be a big disaster preparedness block party to kind of kick us off before the storm season. HMRA, I attended that this afternoon. That's the hazardous materials response team. And mainly we just went through kind of what training has gone on with them and their the 2026 meeting schedule. So now, without further ado, let's talk about the voting for the Trinidad Town Hall paint colors. And we do have a winner. Ding, ding, ding. Oh, it hurts. Forgot I left it out. So we'll have to look at this after. I'll get bigger paint swatches, but Whirlpool Blue will be the body. So it's kind of a gray blue, a beautiful gray and blue, yeah. And then the trim will be Alabaster, which is kind of an alabaster white. And then we have this beautiful navy for the top of the building to kind of create some contrast for the doors and so forth. So I will post bigger paint swatches outside for everyone to see, but we did have a legitimate voting that went on, and this is the winner. So, yay! And then Gabe will talk about the windows, which are going to get replaced soon. Okay. That was rather long. That's my report. So are there any questions from the council about any of the reports? Okay, any questions from the public, members of the public, regarding tonight's committee reports and other announcements? All right, seeing none, then I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the public safety report and turn it over to our interim city manager for that report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the council, I am going to toss this to Josh McCall, Lieutenant Josh McCall, who is currently with us on Zoom. You have the floor.
All right. Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, so looking at stats for the month of September for Trinidad proper, calls for service only up by a couple from the previous month. We had 55, I believe it was, in August for a total. We were at 57 for September. Nothing that really stands out. Majority of those were patrol checks or just general Trinidad town patrols at 11 apiece. So that was almost, close to half of that total. And then we had 6 transfers to other agencies, a handful of public assist calls, 3 unwanted subject calls, a couple of 911 hangups and incorrigible juveniles, and then a couple of suspicious person and suspicious vehicle calls each. And then other than that, just a bunch of one call type things, a 911 misdial, an alarm, a camping violation, CWS cross referral report, an eviction. There was one domestic violence call, and then one missing person call, and then looks like a vehicle investigation and a recovered stolen vehicle. So nothing that stands out as crazy, changes or of numbers or anything shooting up stats wise, looking at that. I don't have the greater Trinidad area, obviously going outside the city stats right in front of me. But I did look at those earlier. They just got done today. The calls for service overall in that were down a handful. I want to say about 15, 17 calls for service down from the previous month for that greater outside area. With that, though, felony investigations and misdemeanor investigations were both up by I think went up like 8 or 10 apiece over that from last month. But none of the other numbers on there seemed to stand out. So, and that wasn't done until this afternoon. So I wasn't able to kind of look at those felony and misdemeanor investigations just to see what corresponded to those as far as what the source of those calls, those cases were, to see if there was any kind of a pattern or anything like that. But again, that's including the greater area. So obviously a wider area outside of that to account for all those calls for service. Aside from that, that's all I have for the stats. I will throw in, and I apologize if I already talked about this previously, but between the different city councils and various community service district meetings and stuff I go to, sometimes I mix them up and what I've already talked to about with who. But we did start our problem-oriented policing team started this week. That is a grant-funded. So 2 grant-funded deputies that are going to be focused on what it sounds like problem-oriented policing. So their primary task will be dealing with like problem locations, residences, things like that. There is, because of how that grant money comes through, there is an opioid nexus to it. So a lot of this is going to be related to drug house type things or things that have some type of a drug nexus to them as far as what they kind of focus on. Doesn't mean they won't touch on some other areas with that, but they'll be dealing with some stuff that maybe doesn't necessarily rise to the level of problem type sales type thing or something that drug task force or somebody might typically address. Or it could be hand in hand with them. But anyways, those deputies started that this week, so we were definitely excited to have that. It's good to have some other units that can definitely give some attention to different problem areas in the county that maybe are not as easy for patrol when they're going to call and stuff like that, and that to focus that attention on. So short of that, unless somebody else has questions, that's all I have.
That's great. Thank you. Are there questions from the council for Lieutenant McCall?
Questions, and thank you for all the good work you do for the city.
Absolutely. I think Gabe has a quick comment or question.
First of all, I just want to say that I've had several very positive interactions with members of the public that have needed service from law enforcement. And the calls, the response times have been within 10 to 15 minutes, which I think is pretty good for emergencies and even some non-emergency situations. But I also, since while I have Josh on the call here, I want to give him some props. I think he does a tremendous job for the city. He's very responsive to me when I call, and I want to communicate with him some needs of the city. But also, I had the pleasure today of meeting Josh Boyer, who is a deputy working for the city. He was standing out front when I got here this afternoon. And come to find out, I actually wanted to talk to the deputy because every time I see him, I want to get their number. I want to talk to him. I want to know, I want to have contacts. And this gentleman was, first thing I said, are you here picking up a kid from school on private business, or are you here, working? And he said, both. He's a deputy that grew up here in Trinidad off Stagecoach Road and went to school, I believe, with Angela, Catherine, and Cameron. And he's now been assigned day shifts. And he makes extra trips to Trinidad because not only does his daughter go to school here at Trinidad School, but his family lives up on Stagecoach Road. So we're getting a little extra attention, and I love to hear that story. So thanks, Lieutenant Josh, for if you had a hand in reorienting his schedule to be up here in Trinidad.
I can't take any credit for that. They picked my seniority, and like he said, he kind of lives up in that area, so I think it makes sense for him to be up there. And he's typically been a night shifter in the past, and I think he decided to switch it up. So he's also one of our field training officers. That he's a corporal that trains our new deputies as well. So I'm glad to hear that he was making a pass through there, and yeah, that we definitely like to hear when you guys are having good experiences with getting the service that we hope to provide. And on the same token, obviously, when things don't go according to plan, we obviously want to know about that as well. But I'm glad it's on the positive side. So with that, I think there's also, if I remember right, and I could be mixing up my days, but I think the school's having a lunch on the lawn thing tomorrow that a couple of deputies are planning on being at, and I'm going to do my best to get up there as well. So if I make it up there, I'll swing by City Hall and say hi as well.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, and before you go, I guess I'll ask, are there any comments or questions from members of the public for Lieutenant McCall? All right, I guess we can let you go. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
Yeah.
Right, anything else on that, Dave? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on then to our items from the floor. At this time, members of the public can address the council with items that are not on tonight's agenda. And comments from the council will be somewhat limited, but if anybody has anything, this is a good time to come forward. Okay, I don't see any items from the floor this evening, so we'll just move right along to the consent agenda. So for the council, any items that you'd like to pull from the consent for discussion?
No, no, just want to note before I go to approve consent agenda, the annual audit report was somewhat interesting. I enjoyed some of the comparative analysis that is in there relative to past years and percentages of general fund budget that are funded through property tax, sales and use tax, occupancy tax, and so forth. But also a nice little useful comparison on page 106 of the packet. Yeah, I guess I would move through the consent agenda.
We're going to continue to get council to add comments, and then have to get public comments, and then we'll approve. Any other council comments about the consent agenda, things that you'd like to pull? I mean, I guess my only comment is that it's really great to be caught up on all the auditing. So thank you to staff for doing that, because that was a big deal, and it's been a kind of a ongoing thing. So appreciate you catching us up there. And are there any public comments about tonight's consent agenda? Things that you would like us to go deep on? All right, then in that case, I'll bring it back to the council. And Bryce, I believe you were ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second? Katie, all those in favor? Aye. So moved. So the consent agenda has been approved for tonight. And with that, then we will move on to tonight's discussion action item and agenda items. My goodness. So we're going to start with the annual unmet transit needs hearing, and I'll turn it over to our city manager, and we may have a guest as well, I believe, for this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we do have a guest. But before I introduce HCOG's Associate Regional Planner, Stevie Luther, who's with us on Zoom. There he is. I'll just say that each year, HCOG conducts a citizen participation process to assess unmet transit needs within Humboldt County. Public is invited during the hearing to express their opinions, solutions, complaints, or suggestions regarding Humboldt County's public transportation systems and or general unmet transit needs. And this is our annual hearing. And I'll turn it over to Stevie to maybe add a little more color to this process. And I believe also Richard Johnson's on the call too. I'm guessing we may want to hear from him, who also represents Representative HCOG. So go ahead, Stevie, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. It's nice to be here with the City Council. And yeah, this is the annual process, and we will evaluate any comments that we hear about whether those unmet transit needs are reasonable to meet or not according to adopted criteria. We do that process through the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, of which Richard Johnson is our chair. And when we adopt findings of unmet transit needs, it allows the local transportation funds, which are based on tax revenues, to go towards local streets projects, and also for the transit funds to be used for the JPA assessment for the HTA operations. And so any comments that we receive are logged, and even if they aren't found to be reasonable to meet, they are considered and provide a good log of needs that we do need to address in the future when funding becomes available. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions if they come up.
All right, any questions from the council?
Stevie?
Okay. Any questions from members of the public on the unmet transit needs? Yes, would you mind coming to the podium just so they can hear you online? Thank you.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Stevie. I'm Carol Monet. I'm speaking as a citizen and not as a member of any committees or organizations that I'm on. I recently did the Week Without Driving, which was a real eye-opener. And I had some thoughts. I know that there can't be more buses that come to Trinidad. I know that the reasons, so there's, as anyone who's taken a bus knows, there are northbound that arrive here. There's 6 buses every day, and southbound, I believe there's 7. If you want to get any place, this is inadequate. But then there's like 15 buses that come just about every hour to the airport. Now, the problem is, if people could take the bus from the airport into Arcata or Eureka, that would alleviate a lot of congestion, parking, things that people complain about. But there's no parking at the airport. You have to, park in that pay a bunch of money thing. So it doesn't really make taking the bus advantageous. It makes it rather annoying. Also, there's no parking anywhere near the airport. Apologies. I will try to be less Italian. So my suggestion is perhaps to get some kind of parking or adequate bicycle storage at the airport. And of course, I want more buses. I'm an old lady and I plan to get older, and at some point I won't be able to drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Other comments or suggestions from members of the public regarding unmet transit needs? All right, then I guess we will bring it back to the council, and unless there are other things, I guess it's a big thank you for joining us tonight and for doing this work, this important work in surveying the transit needs, and we appreciate being a part of it every year.
Yeah.
Did you?
I have, So I'm on the Humboldt Transit Authority, which is kind of works really closely with the HCOG, and they are working with they're going to be working with a micro transit to Trinidad to fill that need, because right now we're not getting, no one takes the bus to the airport because it doesn't correlate with when we're flying out. So they're going to do a pilot program for people to actually call to get a microtransit to the airport and back and pick them up, which is going to be in the roadmap in the next 6 months. They're working on that detail. But yeah, I think that was a great idea. And if you ever want to join the Humboldt Transit Authority meetings. It's the first Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. and you can zoom on in and share those feedback, because we don't get enough people showing up to those meetings to actually take the bus.
Great. Other comments from the council before I close? Okay. All right. Thanks again, Stevie and Richard, for joining us. You're welcome to stay on, but we'll let you go if you prefer to do other things like dinner. Okay. Not that we're thinking about dinner or anything. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and move on to item number 2, which is a discussion decision to appoint 2 council members to represent the city in government-to-government meetings. And in this case, it'll be with the 2 tribal governments, the Rancheria and the Yurok tribe. Did you want to preface this, Gabe, or shall we?
I had a little bit of background in the packet, but I think all the council members present are familiar.
Yeah.
With the process of nominating 2 of your own to represent.
Okay. Well, we can nominate the same 2 people for both, or we can do separate nominations. And I guess I usually like to start by, is anybody interested? And if so, it's better to volunteer than to be volunteered. So I thought I'd ask that first.
I'm interested.
Okay. Katie or Jack, are you guys interested? No? Okay.
Well, I'm interested.
Timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And some of the meetings are in the afternoon, 3 or 4 now. That's still a problem for you though, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Kind of unpredictable.
Okay. All right. I just want to check and give you that opportunity. So I'm fine with, putting my name in the hat then.
One more committee meeting?
Yeah, no. I like the government to government meetings. I love to have the discussions with the tribal governments and understand their concerns and try to come to, some agreements on things that, if there are things that need to be resolved. So I guess the proposal on the table then is for the mayor and vice mayor to be in the G2Gs for both the Yurok tribe and the Rancheria. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go to public comment and see if there are any questions, comments, concerns from members of the public about that assignment. All right, I don't see any public comment, so I will bring it back to the council for a motion.
I move that you and Bryce be the 2 representatives for the G2G meetings for both the G2G.
Okay.
Maybe we should clarify that this would be an ad hoc committee,
Yes.
not a standing.
That is correct. Thank you. Okay, and with that in mind, is there a second for the motion?
Second that.
All right, Jack is seconding. I can't even say the word. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We'll move on then to discussion decision regarding the 2025 job classification and compensation study report prepared by Regional Government Services. And we've been waiting for this report so that we can dot our I's and cross our T's. And I'll turn it over to our city manager to kick us off.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I've got some notes here. I'm going to go over briefly a little bit of the background for anybody in the room that's interested in this topic. Obviously, we have a few folks here tonight, but also just to recap how we got here. So this topic was first introduced by the council to the council by former city manager Karen Sucre in 2016. It was a budgeted priority that carried forward for several years, but never gained traction. That needed to become a reality for the city. Staffing challenges following the COVID era, forced hiring decisions that subsequently created inequities in pay rates, job duties, and complicated our organizational function. The The risks associated with these inequities prompted a serious need for professional third-party review of the city's job classification structure and compensation package and policy. So staff presented findings and illustrated the needs for this study during budget preparations last year in May of 2024. The council prioritized the project upon adoption of the 2025 budget. This was July 1st this year. July 1st, last year, 2024. Former city manager Joe Tagliavashi brought this proposal forward to engage with regional government services to conduct the study. And on March 11th of this year, the council approved $25,000 contract with RGS. Project began with staff feeding RGS with the current city policies, organizational structure, long-range vision and needs, current job description, and employee policies. The second phase consisted of a deep dive questionnaire survey that each employee was requested to complete in their own words, helping RGS better understand the employee's own understanding of their positions with detailed tasks and responsibilities listed. Each survey was submitted and reviewed by city management for concurrence. The third phase of the classification study was RGS digesting the information provided. They developed a legitimate job index, descriptions and titles that match the duties that were described, and they began the compensation study phase based on the framework that was created. And city management fully supports classification titles and job descriptions proposed in this document by RGS. The importance of this project, it can't be understated. There are significant HR risks associated with unstructured job descriptions, arbitrary hiring practices, and the absence of a clear path that staff can rely on during their employment. Clear job descriptions are essential tools required to carry out annual performance evaluations, and fair compensation and policies create the predictability needed to attract and retain valuable employees, which are an organization's most valuable asset, and also direction, very clear direction given to staff by council in the adoption of not only this year's budget, but the prior year budget. So the compensation study component, RGS will be represented tonight by classification and compensation team lead advisor, Patty Howard, who is with us on the screen. Who will be available to answer questions, detailed questions about the study findings, in particular, the median income concluded that forms the basis for the target rate of the pay recommended for each position identified in this plan. The study focuses on internal alignment and implementation components summarized on pages 11 and 12. The rationale for the alignment is to create salary differential between series classifications based on human resources practices, recognizing the complexity of the work expected at each level, and the differences in experience and certification required to perform these duties. The cost of implementing the salary adjustments is described on page 12. The alignment of the current salaries to market median ranges approximately from 15 to 33%, and that's based on each employee. So we can talk about, I'll mention real quick, and then I'll turn this over to Patty. Due to the complexity of identifying sustainable resources to fund this alignment in full, staff is recommending a 10% increase across the board upon adoption of this policy tonight to show good faith and response by the council in recognizing the findings presented in this report. The flat dollar monthly adjustment impact to the payroll budget would just be under $1,800. That's the loaded cost of this 10% increase that's proposed. And the savings achieved from not only having the city manager's salary currently for several months, plus not having hired grant administrator this year, along with not having the full salary applied to the in-house T3 operator, will more than cover this increase for the rest of this year. Part two of this phase, as identified in the motion on page 13, and above at the top of this staff report, is to allow time for staff to perform necessary financial analysis and develop a phase-in approach that provides increases over a multi-year period until the salaries for all classifications are competitive with the market. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Patty, and I also want to say that it was an absolute pleasure working with RGS. They were very professional, and also Patty here apparently is a Humboldt State alumni, which I discovered after working with her for several hours, many hours on this process throughout the last couple of months, and that was fun to hear at the conclusion of our work together. But here's Patty, and what I wanted, I mentioned to Patty that I'd like her to talk about specifically. I can vouch for the job classifications. I know what we need, and I was with each employee with every step of the way in developing these job descriptions. What I wanted her to specifically speak on was the compensation component, because this is a third-party review of the city systems. It's not something that I'm, proposing. I want to make sure that it's very clear that it's outside agency, a third-party firm who specializes in this, can articulate to you how they reach the conclusions with the compensation. So, Patty, if you can hear us well, and you can have the floor.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me tonight. I can't tell you how much I wanted to be there in person. Humboldt County is my favorite place in the world, but I digress. Anyway, so yes, we after we did the class study, and Gabe, kudos to you. You explained the process very well. We met with staff and talked to them about their work, and learned a lot about what it is they do. And the job classifications that you have in your packet, those are the result of that study. When an agency wants both a class and comp study, we always recommend you do the classification study first. That way your class plan is set. You know that the job descriptions that you have reflect the jobs that people are doing, and it's been confirmed, because then what we do is we go out and take those job descriptions and compare them to the job descriptions of other agencies, right? So if yours aren't up to date, then the data we get can be skewed. It just can't be relied upon. So we did that class study. In the report, we've listed the agencies that we surveyed, and we came up with those agencies by doing an analysis where we look at basically standard factors. We look at the services provided by the agency, the size of the agency, the population served, the cost of living, geographical location, a combination of those. Not all of them fit neatly in each of those boxes, but in general, we look at those and do the analysis and look at which ones kind of rise to the top. We looked, in this case, let's see, we selected 10 agencies to look at. City of Arcata, Blue Lake, Eureka, Ferndale, Fortuna, Plymouth, Portola, Rio Dell, Westmoreland, and the county. And some of those, again, because you can look at the county and go, how would that be comparable to us? Well, what we're also looking at is recruitment and retention issues. So usually, if we're looking at a city, we also include the county that in which they exist, because oftentimes that is a competitor for people. We surveyed for all of the classifications in the class plan. When all was said and done, there were, let's see, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my internet today, so everything is running just a little slowly. We did the 7 classifications. We looked at salary, and we looked at a variety of benefits: medical, dental, vision, retirement, different kinds of leaves. Other components might be certification pays. We looked at deferred comp payments. looked at part of retirement. We looked at Social Security as well. So all of those make up the total compensation of a classification. And what we're looking at is, what does that position, what does that class cost the agency in which it resides? And how does that compare to those in the city of Trinidad? So what we look for, and what Gabe referred to, is we normally look at the median when we are compiling data. And in the spreadsheets we've provided to you, there is a summary sheet that gives you kind of an overview of the classifications that we looked at and whether they're over or under the median of the comparator agencies. We look at the median instead of the average or mean. And we recommend that because that really is the central data point for the group of classifications that we're looking at. It is the middle of the middle of the pack. Sometimes when you do the average can be skewed by the outliers. If there are agencies that pay really high or really low. I know some consultants or some vendors may do a thing where they take all they do the average, but then they throw out the high and low. We choose to recommend the median for that. I can't see you all, and some of you don't have video, so I just wanted to say, if anyone has any questions, just speak up, please. Because once I start talking, I'll just be on a roll.
Thank you. We'll start with the council. Any questions or comments from the council first?
Not so far.
Okay.
I had a question, and that was, and I'm looking for the way that it was worded, but it was that some of the positions that were looked at, there was sufficient data, and
Right.
other positions there were not.
Yes.
And I was wondering how I should think about that.
So I'll tell you that in all the time I've done compensation studies, it hardly ever happens that we have sufficient data for every single classification. We use a rule of 4. So what we're looking for, so let me back up just a little. When we go out to the other agencies, I talked about the job descriptions. We don't just, if you have a administrative assistant, we don't go out to all of the other cities or agencies and go, oh, what's the salary for an admin assistant? We look at the actual job description. We look at what are the duties of that job, of that admin assistant? What are the knowledges and skills? What are the minimum qualifications? Who do they report to? All of those kinds of things. And they really need to match on all levels. I mean, we never get 100% match, but we need to feel confident that these really are comparable positions, because job titles, unfortunately, in some agencies, job titles don't always reflect what you think they should or would. So when we do that, oftentimes we may find that perhaps the job title's the same and some of the duties are the same, but then maybe there are additional duties that someone does. And because we don't know the percentages, they really aren't a match. They can be a hybrid kind of classification. So if we don't have at least 4 what we call match classes, we don't feel that we can really recommend a salary based on the data points that we have. Because that, like I say, it happens often, and certainly in bigger agencies where they have many levels within, say, a class series, we don't survey every single classification. We normally do the benchmark class, the journey level class, and then we extrapolate from there. And so what we do when we don't have enough matches is we do an internal tie analysis. And that's kind of that was certainly what we had to do here at Trinidad. So then what we look at is okay, well, we didn't get enough for this position, But are there other positions, even if they're in a different department or a different area, that maybe have the same requirements, or the complexity of the work is similar, or they report to the same people, that kind of thing, to see what that relationship is. And so some of our recommendations are based on internal ties. So that was a big, long description of, for, answer to your question.
You answered my question very well. Thank you. I guess, for me, this has just been kind of a long overdue, process that we needed to do to be more professional, to have good, hygiene around roles and pay equity.
Yes.
And I think it establishes a very structured kind of pay system, and the positions are articulated well, and it's not as confusing for staff. I looked at two of the roles, the city manager and the assistant city manager, and I wondered about the kind of the budget required to have two senior managers. And I answered my own question a bit because, we just had recently our city manager left, and if we hadn't had an assistant city manager of the caliber that we do, we would have probably spent way more than we're going to invest in having those two roles in just shoring up, because, not grant timelines necessarily were missed, but, different budgetary items were missed and things didn't happen, and we could be fined and so forth and so on. So I kind of got myself to the point of thinking that it's an extremely good investment. And so that's when I just wanted to be kind of transparent about my thought process. And let's see, I'm going through my notes. I worry a little bit about grant funding as a risk factor for supporting the investments in Trinidad staff. But I think it's something we've been really successful with over the years, and so I'm not too concerned about it. But it's just something we should flag, I guess. And then I guess lastly, doing this in a phased approach, because I do support people. I'm a big believer in paying people what they're worth, and then some whenever you can, and you will, in the long run, it will pay off, because you're going to have a really high functioning team. So I'm a huge supporter of that. I just think that what we may have to do from a practical standpoint is to layer this in, over the next 2 to 3 years. So, those are kind of my big comments. So, great study, really glad we're doing this. Really understand kind of the need for the senior management positions, and then the kind of the risk of the budget overall. We kind of need to roll into this, I think, over a period of time. And that's all I have. Other comments on the council?
I want to agree with Cheryl commending this report. I'm quite impressed. Overwhelming all the data that came through. And I just want to clarify with you, Gabe, that you said you're proposing a 10% raise across the staff in order to sort of move the dial towards our goal of fair compensation based on this report. Is that right?
Yes, and that's based on a couple of different things. Number one, as you can see, I don't know if you saw the chart. We could probably bring it up if we needed to, but there's a differential in each one of the positions. If you look at the difference between the median for each position, it can range anywhere between 15 and 30%. It just depends. It's just how our situation has been paid, how the roles have been paid, and what that median is. So, if that's one factor. The second factor is that former city manager Joe and I had a discussion about this before he left, and this was a path that he felt, and I supported, was a good approach. And the third thing is that I can tell you that the city can afford it. Right? I can tell you how you're going to pay for it, which I mentioned in the staff report. And then I guess the fourth thing is that, the study, we had a $25,000 agreement to do this study. It was long overdue. And I think it would be to take any step less may not be honoring the investment made in the street. So I felt that was a fair approach, but of course that's just my recommendation, and the council can adjust, adapt.
Do you have any recommendation about when the next step would be? Or have you thought that far?
I have. So again, I think budget discussions are when we really do these deep dives. So, the first step would be to approve something tonight in honor and the report and the classification plan. With as I mentioned in the draft motion at the top, recommendation. And the following steps to implement this plan would occur, or any kind of phased approach to salary adjustments would occur during the budget year. Because, the reality is we need to be able to afford it. We're not going to put ourselves in a situation that's unsustainable. And we do know of some various funding sources that are going to be coming up in the near future. We've got some properties being developed. So there'll be additional properties taxes as a result of some pretty large scale Trinidad developments occurring in the next year to 2 years. And there's some other X factors too that we can really do a deep dive in each budget session in May, knowing what we can expect to anticipate affording through some of the offsets in grant payroll and various other methods. But yes, during the budget year, that's the time to approach this. And the phased in approach would be, X amount now as proposed, and then with each budget year, the difference.
Another question. If we're going to, if we do vote this in tonight for the 10% step up, and then we wouldn't look at it again until next May, June, somewhere in there. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you have any sense of how the staff is going to feel when they take a look at this report and see in black and white that they are underpaid and sometimes significantly? What do you anticipate, or how does that going to roll?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think anyone would want to work for an organization that's not financially solvent. So I think that we're a small enough staff. We've had these discussions behind the scenes. And I think that the next step, as indicated in this report, is that I need to actually have a conversation with each employee next, to make sure that they, the job descriptions reflect their input. So there's no surprises there. But I also have to make sure that they connect with these job descriptions that are now going to be theirs. So as far as the underpaid, I don't believe, gosh, I should pull that up to see which positions were maybe more underpaid than others, maybe in the 30 percentile. Do you have that?
I think the city manager position is the most.
Well, assistant city manager. I think here I'll pull it up right now, and then I can tell you exactly what I think might be the forecast of that. Yeah, 11, I think, or 12 of the compensations. Yeah, there it is. It's assistant city manager, so I don't have to really worry about that one. And the special program manager, which I believe is someone who's also been following this pretty closely. So the rest of them are water treatment. I think water treatment, most of the guys in the water department know that this study is going to change their trajectory. So I'm confident that they're in some.
So
Hope I answered your question.
my question is, what do you think will be the feeling when somebody in staff takes a look at this and hears that it's a 10% for a year? In some cases, that would be pretty slim pickings. I'm not trying to spend the city's money. I'm just wondering about the feelings.
Well, I think if we can articulate a clear phased approach, which, I mean, just to give you an example, like the immediate decision tonight would affect a 10% increase across the board, for instance. So if you're at the 15.6% underpaid from median, getting to that remaining 5.6%, let's just say if we did a 5% increase or more per employee starting next July, that's part of the analysis that we're going to have to deep dive into. But having a plan is better than not having a plan. I think for employees that have been here, that have been following along with this process, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they're probably going to be happy to know that there is a process, because prior to this, there was no process. It was pretty clear.
So just that.
Yeah, there's accountability in this plan. And then I can use this to communicate, or a city manager or finance staff of the city can use this every year to make, wise and sustainable decisions for the city moving forward. But we also have to consider our revenues, So, making promises that the city can't keep is not in anyone's best interest.
No, you make a good point that it's a good faith document. It should be encouraging, even if it is slimmer than one might wish.
Like I say, if I could imagine all the conversations that I've had with the staff, that I think this step right here is highly anticipated.
Other comments or questions from council?
Well, I've got a number of things, but I just want to make sure that Ms. Howard is, I'd like to allow her to finish first before I get into my questions, which go more to the job descriptions.
Okay. Ms. Howard, we're turning it back over to you for further comment.
Okay. Well, I've gone through most of the items that I was going to talk about. Just based on your conversation, as someone who's done class studies and comp studies really all over California and even outside of California now, while working for RGS, I will tell you a 10% increase is a very generous increase. Many agencies are not able to do that or choose not to do that much of an increase. So I think it's a really good faith effort on to recommend that 10%. I think it does show that the city's serious about getting people to market. I think people understand the fiscal constraints of any government agency, especially if you work in it. I mean, that. So I just wanted to make that comment. I would say that there are a lot of ways to do a phased approach. It can be a certain percentage every, depending on, like, if it's every budget year. It could be, I've worked with agencies who have said, well, what we'll do, this is a little bit more math, but it's, we're gonna get everybody so they're halfway to the market. Well, that percentage is going to be different for each classification depending how far away you are from the market. So that way, people that are further away from the market get more of an increase. And some people look at that as more equitable than everybody getting a straight across percentage. Some just do a percentage. And then as you get to the median for some classes, obviously the next phase, you might be able to give more to get people to where they need to be, because you're not giving every classification money anymore. So, I will leave that to Gabe and your financial people, but many agencies take a phased approach because, to even do a 10% increase is pretty, can have quite a fiscal burden on an agency. So I would say that. I think the only other thing I would recommend, and we recommended in the report, is that the city consider creating or approving a compensation policy, something in writing that says how you're going to set your salaries, perhaps how often you're going to do a salary, a compensation survey, the agencies that are going to be included. If it's not comfortable to be super definitive, it might be, we're going to do a periodic, compensation study and, decide, does the median work for you? Do you think the mean would be a better data point to use? Those kind of things, so that when you all and all of the employees of Trinidad win that big lotto one day, and there are new people, they'll have a foundation and they'll have kind of the blueprint to do this again when you need to do it. So that's my other plug for compensation. So with that, I'll take any other questions that you have about the classifications or anything else.
Okay, Bryce, you're up.
Okay, I read through the job descriptions and I made some notes. And I'm starting at page 162. And this is for the, well, first of all, Gabe, give us a recap of who does what and what their job is called right now, so that we all have a baseline understanding.
So let's see, starting with me, I'm the city clerk, assistant city manager, now interim. And my job description was adopted, what month was it?
Back in July, I think.
September.
Okay.
September. Or was it? No. Sorry. It was.
A few months ago.
It was recently. Like maybe it was July. And that was knowing that Joe was going to retire, and we wanted to have the succession adopted in advance. And that this job description for assistant city manager was also developed as part of this process. We just pulled from it and moved it to the front of the line, knowing it easily. Then we have Anton, who is currently our administrative assistant for the city. Let's see, and he pretty much runs the town hall on a day-to-day basis, the business of the day-to-day service to the city. Angela Cather is currently our grant administrator. And doing more. And now, in the absence of our city manager and the work being distributed, she's, we're all adapting currently. But these are our current. These are our. And then we have Kyle Shipman, who is currently our public works supervisor, and Derek Shadle, Carl Anderson, and Saget Brown. They're all public works and water department water treatment specialists. They're expected to, or they are certified with a T2 or going to be a T2 or greater operators in public works. So as they're defined in this new classification process, the treatment plant operator, public works specialist. So we're kind of combining those titles because anyone with a specifically independent water title will now be certified in the distribution system as well and required to be able to understand how the distribution system works, not only the water treatment process. So there are a few changes being recommended in this plan. And for instance, Kyle will be not just a public works employee, he will be a supervisor. He's got the most senior level experience in public works, and he'll be supervising the day-to-day function of any public works employee. And that too is important because right now when we do our job evaluations, there isn't anyone on paper that is technically a public works supervisor. So he does that casually. I've been doing it casually until I had this title, assistant city manager, for some of the administrative staff.
And that's separate from the water plant operator, which would be
Yes.
another position, and the special projects manager. Which
Yes.
special projects is open.
Special projects. Exactly.
There's no
And,
one in special.
No special projects role at this time.
And again, these positions that were created in this document were intended for current employees. For instance, I'll just, Angela Cather special projects. And then we hire a new grant coordinator. Prior to this, adopting this plan, we had an empty grant director position, and that was Becky Price Hall, who retired this summer. And Angela was working as a grant coordinator, so now she's kind of left in this grant coordinator title without a director. So moving her into the special projects position would then elevate her responsibilities. She would be overseeing grants, which we do need a person in that capacity, and that was also a plan adopted by the council in the budget this year. We just haven't implemented yet because we've been waiting for this document. So we had a literature to publicize that was in sync with what was coming, which is what we're discussing tonight. We didn't want to, hire somebody back in July or August without this being in place.
Okay, thanks. So get into the specific relative to the administrative assistant. Page 162, I see that one of his jobs is one of the things he'll do is resolve citizens' concerns and complaints. I'm wondering if we should qualify that in consultation with the city manager or the assistant city manager. It seems like a lot to put on the administrative assistant. You solve all the problems that people bring in, to the city. So I think we should,
take that as input. That sounds.
Yeah, because he's done what he's does.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be bigger challenges that people higher up have to weigh in on.
Yeah. So works with management to
resolve
citizens.
Yeah. So that's one thing I think we
receives and distributes something to that effect.
Well, he's definitely going to receive it.
Oh yeah,
that's for sure. I don't know if you should say that he's going to resolve them all too. So, and then at page 164, he's also charged with to draft resolutions and ordinances. First saw that, I thought, wow, that's a big responsibility for an administrative assistant. Also, but then I see that, and also in laws and codes, so forth. And yeah, once again, in consultation with assistant city manager or the city manager, who has the authority to consult with the city attorney, make sure that we're getting, the right interpretations put out there to the public and so forth.
As needed.
Right, or in consultation with people higher up than
Yeah, and all those get approved by the city manager and council.
Yeah.
So I think, was this trying to say that the person would just like literally draft them for
literally type it up.
like literally, yeah. Okay.
So because I see that the assistant city manager at page 167 actually, compose the resolution, come up with the language.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
The thing at 169, I see that the grants coordinator is what says supervised by the assistant to the city manager. But I think that should be the assistant city manager, because we've eliminated the assistant to the city manager. At one time we were going to have both, and I was wondering if we really needed so many assistants, but so that's just a typographical.
Yes. Thank you for catching that.
Sure.
Actually, that would, I think, Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the title, instead of assistant to the city manager, that's the special projects manager. So I think the thought was that the grant coordinator would report to the special projects manager, because the special projects manager has oversight over all of the the grants, along with the other things that they do.
And I still have a problem fundamentally with the titles that I'll just log again that I think could cause confusion, that you have an assistant city manager and then an assistant to the city manager, right? So we nixed it.
Yes.
There's no more assistant.
Your assistant.
Yeah.
to
That-
Special project.
The position that was the assistant to the city manager is now the special projects manager.
Right, okay,
We
good.
just,
Then
yeah,
it's
we
not
just
a problem.
didn't catch this in the guidance coordinator. It should say reports and receives supervision from the special projects manager or designee, and then exercises no supervision over staff.
Right, I
And
think
then
Bryce is highlighting the
the
same thing.
assistant city manager,
Yes,
I'm sure will, be a good resource for people downstream to
yes,
get things clarified and so forth.
absolutely. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, and at page 172, it also says special projects person plans, develops the goals and objectives of the city manager office. Seems to me like the city manager should be doing that. You know what I mean? It's there. It's there.
So this is on 172, it's the second
It's-
bullet
yeah,
under examples
It's
and
talking about the special projects person.
yeah.
Let me get to the page.
Well, you could argue that the policies, goals, and objectives and priorities come from the city council.
But they would go through the city manager, I
Agreed,
think. Correct.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree with you.
seems to me he or she has got to have higher status than the special projects coordinator.
Yeah, because this is basically saying that the special projects manager is giving direction to the city manager, whereas I think what Bryce is saying is it's the other way around.
Right, that's.
And I agree with that, I don't know if the other councilors want to feel free to weigh in.
I thought I did. Say it again.
So what Bryce is basically saying is that this example of duties for special project manager says that they plan, develop, and implement the policies, goals, objectives, and priorities of the city manager's office. And what we're saying is it's the other way around. The city manager establishes those priorities,
Right.
and the special projects person would help execute.
Right.
So for clarification, just leaving out plans and develops and just saying implements the policy,
Yeah.
goals, objectives,
Yeah, I
and
think
priorities of
that-
the city
I think
manager's
that
office.
would-
There you go.
yeah.
We can do that.
I think what we were looking at is that the special projects manager would be part of the kind of management team of the city manager's office. So there'd be the city manager, assistant, and special projects manager. If you look in the assistant city manager, it has the same duty. So it's kind of that group effort kind of thing to implement those and plan them out and assist with that. But if we want to make sure that it reads the way it should. So if our intent isn't coming through.
Maybe assists in the plan, development, assists in plan development and implements the policy, blah, blah, blah. So assists in the development of plans
Assist, but
versus, so that makes sense, Gabe.
It's
And then implements, blah, blah, dot, dot, dot.
So I would ask you, in the assistant city manager, would you want that same language? Because like I say, the assistant city manager, it reads exactly like this. Would the assistant
I
city
think-
manager also assist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
the answer is yes, the city manager has got to be the top person.
Right.
As far as,
it's setting the priorities
Right.
Yeah.
and
with
And then
the city council.
the other high level managers assist that person with those functions. Got it.
yeah. It also occurs to me, you may be able to gain a lot of efficiency by consolidating projects coordinator with the grant coordinator. Do we really need 2 positions for that? Angela is already knows how to be the grants coordinator, taking on additional responsibilities as the project manager, but it seems like there's a fair amount of overlap positions based on the descriptions.
I have thought of the special projects manager as being more like a program manager. So someone who, for example, does the septic program overall and, you know, comes up with the marketing around it and executes it and then follows through to make sure that people adhere to the program guidelines. So I think of that as being kind of a different role than Angela's. I think the handoffs and the handshakes have to be clear between the 2 roles. And I'm sure staff has other examples of kind of programs. At some point, like I see the grants person handing off things, like once the funding is acquired, then the projects manager takes the lead and executes the project. I think that's how it works, but you know, Angela or Gabe can weigh in.
Yeah. Well, I'm just, you know, this is in the interest of, you know, being fiscally responsible. But we're so fortunate that we are in good financial shape here in Trinidad, and I really, I trust Gabe's assessment that we can afford to do this. But you never know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah.
And want to have a system that's sustainable. The audit points out that Trinidad is somewhat vulnerable in that we depend heavily on the tourism industry or general fund revenue. And if there was ever a significant decrease in tourist activity that would affect both the sales tax and the TOT revenue, you could really have to step back and, you know, reevaluate the situation. I don't really think that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. Possible. So anyway, just something to think about for future possible consolidation.
Just to interject for a moment. Now we are keeping the special projects and the position for grants. It's just
at this point,
Angela will be sort of doing both for the time being. But the idea is we're going to hire a grants person.
Well, yes, that's what was budgeted this year. But I can attest that there's times where we have to consolidate our duties, right? And currently that's what she's doing. She's doing the grant job and she's also picking up extra assignments in. You know, I would say that it's we have to be careful about that, you know, how sustainable that is for the long haul. But that is you know, what Councilmember Kenny is referencing is basically the fiscal prudence that we need to be able to demonstrate during our budget processes with an understanding of what our grant revenue or grant payroll injection is going to be for the year based on, you know, the past where, you know, one given time, I think, 2 years ago, we had $5 million worth of grant money rolling through the city, and we would have never wanted to put all that responsibility on one person, you know, because there's the consequences are just too great for not following the grant guidelines and the financial duties associated. So there will be times where we may have to be more prudent than others, and that also depends on our grant forecast. Our grant forecast and our grant needs, and also the demands of our council from time to time, really wanting the city to pursue grant funding for projects will create a need for maybe more grant heavy staffing than others. So right now we're running really lean. And I believe that back in May and June, when the budget was forecasted for the year, we had envisioned hiring a grant coordinator because Becky Price Hall, our grant director, was exiting. So that is on your staff to make you very well aware on what is fiscally prudent.
Yeah, I mean, I think the risk would be putting too much of a workload on a grants coordinator could mean that we don't get the revenue to fund the positions. And so the grant coordinator traditionally has paid for not only their job, but other jobs, which is what I was referring to earlier about the kind of potentially the long-term risk. So if we had them doing too many special projects, my concern would be that they wouldn't be able to do the really important work of getting more money for the city. And so in terms of fiscal responsibility, I think keeping that emphasis on grants is important. But at the same time, the reason I like the special project manager, maybe it's a part-time job. I don't know yet. I mean, that's up to you, Gabe, but to a large extent. But I think about the septic program, right? It's a great example of a program that somebody really needs to manage because, before we had that, we had sewage running down on the beach. And that's not, so there's some really severe impacts on some of these if we don't have a good project manager. Just things like even renovating the town hall, a project manager could take that over and free up your time. And there's a whole bunch of those kind of discrete projects. So maybe it's part-time, not full-time. I don't know. That would be something to consider that might help address Bryce's concerns. But I definitely want to keep grants I would opt for keeping grants as a big emphasis.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
So on the public works side, the consultant right now he's CPO.
These are contract
CPO.
TPO, chief plan operator. T3 contract employee currently serving the city at I think it's $4,000 a month flat rate, and that was what 4 or 5. I thought on that, but that was post Coleman Engineering, Sandbell Engineering. We found this individual, and again, the succession plan that we got $1,500. So we were hoping that by the end of this calendar year, he would have that service.
Yeah. So, okay, well, just in general, I would comment also that, well, I understand that we have to look at, other agencies and what they pay, because there's really not much else you can do. The fact remains that Trinidad is very unique in the bigger picture of cities because we're one of the smallest cities in California. Looking at Enrique and Arcata, what city manager makes there, for example, I mean, we only have like 1 square mile of territory, 350 citizens we have to deal with. So, I think there's a good argument that could be made that, we should skew lower, for that reason, even though technically both have city managers and so forth. Just the scale is so different here in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was curious about that. I thought maybe Ms. Howard could kind of help us understand, because it is something that in the past we've made comparisons to other small cities in California. And in this case, we looked at local, but to Bryce's point, Arcata is much larger and much more complicated, as is Eureka. So,
yeah. And then a point, as far as, our people may be a little underpaid compared to, some other places, but there's, I think, a quality of life quotient that they enjoy here, just like we who live here. Here on your lunch break, you can go down and sit down by the old Memorial Lighthouse and take in like a world-class view of, the people save all year to come on vacation, to come, spend a little time looking at this. And, so that's a little bit of something that, counterbalances the fact that, okay, the hard cash compensation may not be quite as the same, but there are other factors that, Trinidad employee, this desirable thing, I understand why.
Yeah, Bryce, that's a good point. I'm on a council with a Fortuna representative, and they ran out of cash and they couldn't afford to give the raises to their valued employees. And they were just couldn't. They wanted to, like what we're doing, but their budget wouldn't allow it. So they came up with the 4-day work week. So everyone worked 4 9s, and at first it was, people didn't really like it because of maybe. But now they won't want to give it up. Like they're just loving this 4-day work week. I don't know how we could ever incorporate that, obviously, because we need people in the office every day. But maybe that's an opportunity for certain people that could opt for 4-day week. So we don't have to pay them more, but we give more compensation in quality of life.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And yeah, everybody values things different. Some people value their time more than the money. Other people, really have certain financial needs. They got to get every hour they can, working. That's just different approach to life.
Right. I have, in my past, I work for an agency that's not in your boat, but due to fiscal constraints, the reality was that with the agencies that were considered our comparable agencies, we were never going to pay that much money. We just weren't. I mean, that was the fiscal reality. And so it was determined that if our salaries, instead of being like within 5% plus minus, they did a recommendation that, look, if we can be 10%, within 10% of the median, we're calling it good because that's what we can do. And we kind of take what we can, that's just, and we'll, whatever consequences come with that, that's what we'll do. I've had other agencies, and what you might want to consider is doing a survey of employees about maybe the benefits or things that you could do that don't really have a dollar amount next to them that could enhance the employment experience, and that, because you're right, everybody has a different motivation for work. And I'll say, unless you're really, really struggling financially, money usually isn't it. There are a lot of things that people want out of their work that don't really have anything to do with money. So there may be other creative things that can be done either to the benefits package or within policies, like you say, do a 9-80 schedule maybe, or a 4-10 schedule. Maybe people want more time off as opposed to, more money. So those are some other things that you may want to consider. And the reality is Trinidad is very unique. And so it may be that because of some of the other factors that it is okay for you not to be right at the median of all of these larger agencies. So it's,
one thing I think of too is when we go out to recruit, though, we do have that point, right? We do have, we're recruiting and we have competition, and the competition are generally those other cities that we just described. So that was, but I think if the council's okay, I'd like to open up to public comment.
Can I just one minute before I steal that term from Richard Johnson? He likes to.
Yeah.
Page 180. I think there's a typo because there's 3 room. It looks like it's intended to say room numeral 1, 2, and 3. But it says Roman numeral 1, 2, and 2.
I see 1, 2, and 3. Which word are you?
Page 180.
Page 180. Okay, so we have the treatment plan operator 1, 2, and 3. Maybe it was a typo on just your.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3.
I'll tell you mine. Gabe, what do you
see? 1, 2, and 2.
You see
Yeah,
it?
I see it.
I'm not crazy after all. See, I knew it.
I can show you.
Treatment plan administrator, public works specialist.
Maybe I'm looking at I thought you were looking at the TPO. Oh. So the TPO.
Page on.
Okay.
No, it's like a heading.
This one.
I don't have the same packet as you.
Gotcha.
We got
I'm looking at the
treatment
applicant.
plant operator, 1, 2, 2, public works specialist, top of the page.
So shouldn't it be 1, 2, and 3?
I believe so, yeah.
Can you,
There's TP01, there's.
I see it. Yeah, it's at the top of the same page.
1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2 doesn't.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just a typo at the top of the page. Says 1, 2.
You're good.
Well, good catch.
so can you, excuse me, can you tell me what page of the job description it is? Like, is it page 2 of 5, 3 of 5?
180 of our packet, that's all.
It's Patty, it's 1 of 5.
Oh, okay.
On treatment plant operator, public works specialist job description.
Oh, I see. Gosh, it's right in front of my face. Okay. Yes.
All right, are we ready to helicopter up?
Sure.
Ay.
We're going to helicopter up and we are going to move to public comments. Are there public comments about the compensation study? And I see Ms. Thompson moving towards the podium. Please go ahead.
I think that we should give a 10% increase right away to all the employees. Just from living here for 6 years and I've lived in a lot of places. Humboldt County is one of the most expensive places to live. Gas is one of the highest in California. The food here is more expensive than other areas. We also want to retain our staff. We have this amazing staff, as you well know. We want to retain our people here. And as the mayor said, we also, if we have to recruit someone, we want to have it, compensate people to attract people and the right people here too. It seems like most of our people are young people. And when I was younger, it was about the money. Of course, I want to live in a nice place, but I need the money too. You start your career, you have to, build your family, you have to buy a house. So I feel like it's really about the money and retaining people. And we know that they wear different hats all the time, and if something happens, they're right there to take care of the emergency. So I hope we give them that 10% that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comments? Okay, I don't see any other hands raised online, and there are none in the room. So I would be willing to make a motion on this to adopt the 2025 job classification plan and compensation policy prepared by RGS and authorize a budget amendment to cover a 10% salary increase effective immediately as the first step in aligning salaries to the median rates identified in the plan, and prepare a phased strategy proposal, and to consider a phased strategy proposal which might reach full alignment beginning July 1st, 2026. And I've changed the wording a little bit from what was in the staff report. And the spirit of that change, I hope I said it right, but the spirit is that I think I'm okay with the 10% across the board, but would like the council to vote again for subsequent increases, rather than an assumption that we're going to get to full alignment. In other words, we might not get to the full median for the reasons that we all just discussed and for fiscal reasons. But, I personally could see committing to 10% now and then revisiting it later in the budget discussions, if that makes sense. Okay.
I think that's a wise approach. I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the motion passes unanimously, and congratulations to staff on your increase, and thank you for due diligence. And also, I want to thank Ms. Howard for joining us tonight and sharing her insights on this study. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say it was a pleasure working with your staff, Gabe, Joe, everybody. It really was a pleasure. And I'm going to get up there one of these days. So anyway, and stop by City Hall and see the new paint job. Anyway, so you all have a great evening and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Uh-huh.
All right, team, we are on the November council meeting schedule. I think there's a proposal to maybe move our November meeting to a different date. So this should be a pretty short topic, and then we'll continue on our agenda.
Yes. We flipped the page to November after we flipped the page to October, and we realized that Tuesday, November 11th, which is our regularly scheduled meeting date, happens to fall on Veterans Day this year. So with that said, we thought it would be a good idea to ask what may your pleasure be for some alternative dates. And we didn't want to make any assumptions without your approval. I just threw out Wednesday, November 12th, the following day, along with Tuesday, November 18th. You know, anything after that, we get into the Thanksgiving holiday break, and that's probably not more. So it could potentially be earlier as well. We leave it Monday the 10th, but typically Mondays are not good for meeting days because we don't have probably doesn't have a chance oftentimes to review.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I like the idea of the Wednesday.
Wednesday the 12th sounds
Yeah,
great.
works for me too.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Any public comments, any issues with us doing a meeting on the 12th of November instead of the 11th? All right, back to your motion, Bryce.
Move that meeting. It's a November meeting date, Wednesday, the 12th, instead of the 11th, our usual Tuesday meeting.
Okay,
Second that.
It's a legal holiday.
yes, and Jack has seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so moved. And if you guys wouldn't mind, maybe next month we can set an agenda item to discuss the December meeting. Because I might want to change that date or have a discussion around that. I'll explain later. Okay. Okay, thank you. So we're good for November 12th. Everybody mark your calendars. And now we are ready to move on. Thank you for those of you who've been patient. Our next topic is regarding a city council vacancy appointment. And we have two potential candidates here tonight who have been patient with our discussions. And so I'll turn it over to our city manager to kind of lead us into this, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you again. The summary tonight that we're looking to achieve is to interview and fill the vacancy by appointment to serve remaining 1-year term through November 2026 with one of two applicants that we've been lucky enough to receive letters of interest from. And let's see, if the council chooses tonight to make an appointment, then we will swear that new member in at the beginning of the next meeting. So, a little bit of background, the city accepted a letter of resignation from former member Carrie Varela on September 9th and authorized staff to begin the recruitment. Ms. Varela was elected in November 2024 and will have served 8 months of a 4-year term upon acceptance of her resignation. So the city must actively seek a replacement for the remainder of her term through 2028 with an asterisk. A successful candidate will be able to serve until the next general election, which is in November 2026. If they wish to continue beyond that date and serve the full term, they will have to complete the nomination process next summer, which occurs between July and August, to have their name appear on the ballot in November 2026. And it would be a contest. Anyone from the public would be able to apply for that seat for the remaining 2 years. So the current council members' terms are Mayor Kelly expires in 2026. Tuttle 2026 December, Breckenridge 2026. Current term is vacant and it will be subject to a 2026 vote. So it'll be 4 seats potentially on next year's ballot. And Councilmember Kenny, whose term expires in 2028. So the basic eligibility requirements for serving on the council, you must be a resident of the city of Trinidad, registered voter inside the city limits. In case of yes, and there must be a majority of vote of the council, obviously, to appoint to this position. The one government code or election code requirement states that the city must fill this term within 60 days of the resignation. Right now, we're halfway through that period. But for whatever reason, one of the 2 letters of interest that you have received, if you decide you want to extend that period, you're welcome to do it. You'll have to make an appointment by the next meeting. With that said, we've got 2 candidates who filed letters of interest. John Waskowitz, did I say that? Thank you. Who I've had the pleasure of speaking with a few times, and Mr. Andrew Davis, who we have been familiarized with his participation in meetings and public service over the last, I guess, maybe a year. And I will turn this over to the council. You are welcome to ask them to introduce themselves. You're welcome to ask any specific questions. There's no format that you're required to abide by, and it's all yours.
Well, if I may, I would like to ask both John and Andrew to introduce themselves. And I was thinking we'd go in order. John submitted his application, if you will, first, and maybe have John say, come up to the podium if you're comfortable, or whatever you're comfortable with, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested, and then maybe have Andrew do the same. And if you don't mind, the council can, if you're comfortable with that, and then the council can maybe shoot you guys some questions as appropriate. Thank you.
Well, pleasant good evening to council members and everyone else in attendance tonight. My name is John Waskowitz, and I know this has been a long day for everybody here, so I will keep my comments short and to the point. And I know Andrew wants to speak as well. So, I live here with my significant other, Gloria Spiegel, and our 3-year-old German Shepherd, and we live over on Underwood, which is on the northwest end of the city limits of Trinidad. We've been here about 7 years now, and we kind of are refugees from the inland side of the state where the wildland fire situation became tenuous for us. So we wanted to find a nice, safe, secure, healthy environment. And Trinidad certainly meets all those requirements. I would have to say that a large part of this is due to the efforts put forth by the city council here. Please accept my gratitude for all the hard work and stamina and grit that you people put into making these hard decisions every month. And like most other people here in Trinidad, I think I have the same feeling that this is a safe, secure, and healthy environment. And I think we'd like to keep it like that over the long term. So I'm here at the behest of a few neighbors and friends that suggested that perhaps I talk to the city council about filling Carrie's vacancy. And so I got to thinking about this since I retired. I haven't really been doing a whole lot of anything. I did have one memorable event when I walked across the Iberian Peninsula of Spain, Portugal. There's a pilgrimage trail they call the Camino Santiago. So I took a month out of my retirement and did that. And I have to tell you, if you ever have the opportunity to do that, please, it's one of those memorable events that you often hearken back to. And you think about, the people that you met on that and the stamina that it took to complete that trip. Hundreds of miles, but let me get back to where I was here. So before I retired, I was an airline pilot for American Airlines, and I got a chance to fly out into all those faraway exotic places that you see in the travel brochures. And before that, I was a pilot in the United States Marine Corps. And I got to travel to some of the not so desirable places in the world where you wouldn't drink the water out of the tap. And people there did not have a safe, secure, and healthy environment that they were living in. Sometimes they were fleeing their homelands to other places just to get away from those types of onerous situations. Before that, I was a student in university, and I was able to cobble together enough units and grade point average to get a degree in environmental resources management and move on down the road. But over the course of the last few decades, I have had the opportunity to be part of other councils and boards. And I'll just talk about two of them here real quickly, and then I'll hand it over to Andrew. I was on the county board, which was for a resource conservation district. The resource conservation district is essentially a conduit between the federal government and rural landowners for dealing with water quality issues, wildland fire suppression strategies, invasive plants, and a host of other things. But probably one of the introductions that I was able to make in this on this board was to the public land trust, the idea of public land trust and private entities. You know, those are two things that I was not very familiar with. But working with the RCD, I kind of was introduced to that whole concept, and I thought that was pretty important. And the other board that I was part of was Fire Protection District. It was an 86,000 acre fire protection district. And that this small volunteer fire department was responsible for, in conjunction with CAL FIRE. They had their areas of responsibility. But started out as a volunteer fireman, but I realized that, you know, fighting fires in the summer in a full protection gear was really more a job for a young person. So when the first job came available, or the first opening on their board came available, I moved from volunteer firefighter to the volunteer to the Fire Protection District Board of Directors. And I eventually became the chairperson for that. And I, you know, and it was really a one of those jobs where it was, we brought a lot of young men and women into the volunteer force to train them to be firefighters and emergency medical first aid responders and swiftwater rescue people as well. We had a river that ran right down the middle of our fire district. And they often got trained, you know, from the volunteer fire units to go and move on to CAL FIRE and, you know, become responsible firefighters and have good jobs. And so that was kind of, I felt kind of that was a fruitful position for a lot of those young guys and girls. So anyhow, unless you have any questions for me, that's about all I have. And thanks once again for all the good work you guys do here. It's Katie.
Just a question. Is there anything that you can put your finger on that you would, if you were on the council, you'd like to pursue to see improve or change or?
Well, you know, I know there's a host of issues that you're dealing with right now, and based on my experience, you know, I have anything that's kind of resource related. You know, I can probably sit on those types of committees that would be of some assistance to the city council. Any specific items to change, I can't think of off the top of my head. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Thanks. Andrew, do you want to come up and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in being on the city council?
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for your time and consideration. Just a little background about myself. I grew up in a small town, not this one, but a very slightly larger town, but still very similar environment, politics and things. My parents served in various capacities in leadership of the town, and it's just something that kind of rubbed off on me, and I've always been interested in governance and that sort of thing. So having an opportunity here to join in and help out would be would be part of kind of just a continuation of a lifelong interest. In terms of my kind of professional experience, I have a background in finance and accounting. Spent better part of 20 years doing various roles in that I won't bore you with, but I think that is one of the key areas I kind of look at here in the town, is just making sure that this thing kind of keeps turning over. And I think I can bring some expertise in that area that would be helpful to the council and others. I don't know if you had a chance to read the letter I wrote, and I just kind of wanted to hit a couple of points in there. I do think that sort of change is inevitable, and I know that's a hard thing in this town, and I understand why it's hard, and I oftentimes agree with it being hard. But I also think there's smart solutions that can, achieve what we need to achieve while still kind of keeping the character and the coastal nature of the town, which I think is really does us all. In terms of the work of the council and the work of kind of the government of Trinidad, I've spent the better part of the last year both attending city council meetings and also participating in the Animal Advisory Committee, and have really gotten kind of my hands on a little bit already in terms of what it's all about. So I'm understand that there's it's more work than it looks like, I think, from the outside. I understand that. I understand the kind of the gravity of the decisions that are made. Oftentimes you're having to choose between two groups of people in town that want different things and find a way. So I'm ready to do so.
Questions?
I'd like to ask you the same question. Is there anything in Trinidad that you can put your finger on that if you were on the council, you'd want to improve, change?
I could probably speak to two things. I think one, I'll speak to a couple of things. One, I think in terms of improvement, with my background in finance and accounting, there's some fiscal transparency that I think we could improve upon. I was I applauded the budget process as I sat through that this year. I thought that was quite excellent. I think there's some things that could be a little better in terms of through the year, kind of keeping tabs on that. And I don't think that, just to clarify that even a little further, I would hope that those things would not be incredibly onerous on city staff, and they could be developed in a way that is relatively easy to report on and give the council a little better guidance on that. It's no secret, if anybody's in these meetings, obviously I have strong opinions about the signs on Edward Street. Not going to shy away from that. Everybody knows we don't need to delve into that tonight. I think in terms of forward-looking things that I see coming, I am very open-minded, and I don't have a strong opinion about the Humboldt Bay Water District, but I think that's a very important and salient discussion for the town for the future of the town, depending on whichever way that goes. But I'm very I would happily join in that conversation. I know it's going to be a very tough decision, I think, at times. And the other aspect of the town that I think is a little more on the planning commission's court, but I'm interested in is just generally housing. We know the state has a real preference for increased volume of housing, and I think from what I can tell from what I've read from city council stuff, we've got some pretty strong arguments for our positions and things, and that's great. I think that's going to continue to be something that we're going to have to kind of deal with, because we are also going to need to, think about our own population and how we keep things over here. So those are kind of some things that I'm interested in. No strong opinion one way or the other, but that I'm just in.
The questions for Andrew? Okay, thank you. And I think I will, before we have a discussion, are there any public comments related to either John or Andrew that anyone wants to come forward and discuss? All right, okay, back to the council. And, speaking of compensation, you do get $50 a month. So if you're selected, so I know there's really high stakes here. So, with that, on that brief moment of levity, I think what we'll do is, the council can make comments, and then I'll ask each of you to tell me, because this is a public and transparent process, who you would like to choose at this particular juncture. And I think the other thing I would like the candidates to know, when I originally, before I was elected on the council the last time, the first time, there were 3 of us, and I was not one of the people that was selected. And I eventually ended up running, and well, actually I was selected and then I ran and I was elected. But so it's, sometimes it's a process where the timing just isn't right, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that we don't want you to serve on the council. It's more of a timing thing. And there's also an opportunity to run for office. So I would like, both of you, but we'll have to choose one tonight. So with that preface, other comments or questions, or would you like to just go ahead and make your
I think both of you guys should be on the council. You guys would be amazing, whether tonight or in a year. I'm gone. But conflict resolution is the one thing that is a sticking point for me. I don't attend the Animal Advisory Committee because of a meeting that happened in April of last year where I felt like Andrew was attacking me, and it led her to resign. So that kind of is a sticking point for me.
Okay. So your preference would be at this juncture would be John.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Thank you for your transparency, and I understand your concerns. Do either of you want to go?
Well, sure. I just would like to comment that, we're so fortunate here in Trinidad that even though it may be declining in many places, and I think it is, the spirit of volunteerism is still alive and well in Trinidad, because basically that's what it is, a volunteer job. $50 a month. That's what they were paying back in 1986 when I was on my first term as a city council person. And it wasn't very much back then either, but it's a lot less now. So yeah, both great candidates, I think. Articulate, willing to get involved. So it's very tough to pick one or the other. To me, what I would consider the tiebreaker would be that on a monthly basis, we always get the spreadsheets to go over. Although I do my best to, really look at them carefully and understand, it's a very daunting process for me. And I think it would be a valuable addition to the council to have someone with a financial background who could help us maybe improve the communication aspect of allowing the council to understand, what are the red flags we should watch out for and that kind of stuff. And also the fact that almost a year ago now, I guess, when I first put my name for Andrew was one of 3 of us that put his name in for only 2 available seats. And when he heard that there were 2 other people, he kind of graciously bowed out and said, well, you guys go ahead, I'll wait for another time. So my way of thinking, kind of like, first come, first served viewpoint, he, had his oar in the water a little sooner, and I would be inclined to, and also as a procedural, I think this should be a motion. We always decide things by way of motion here. It will come down to a vote, of course, so.
It will.
But it's a little different.
That is a good point. I thought we were supposed to each say and then go with the majority. So I may be procedurally leading us in the wrong direction, Bryce.
Well, it's,
Do you want to,
I think it amounts to the same thing.
But I'd
Yeah.
like to continue with the process
Yes.
that we have. So halfway down the river, so.
Yeah, well, it's actually chair's discretion, so.
Yeah, I mean, you could, maybe let's do this. Why don't we continue the way we are, but you don't necessarily have to vote. You can just talk about the two candidates and your feelings at the moment of where you believe they, you would. Yeah. Do you follow me? Like you could say,
And then you'll have a motion.
and then we'll make a motion. So you could, if you want to make any comments about, like, if you know either of them and have experience with them and you'd like to share that so that the rest of the council knows, that would be appropriate, I think. Otherwise,
Okay.
we'll just go to motion, because I think you're right, Bryce.
I think I've explained my rationale for
Okay.
favoring one or the other, but I would
Okay.
want to thank them both sincerely for their willingness. And whoever doesn't, get it this time around, that 2 years goes by really quick for the next opportunity or the sooner opportunity.
Yeah,
So
it's going to be
I think
sooner.
it's safe to say that anybody who lives within the city limits and wants to be on the city council, it won't be very long before you either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are 3 of us who are rolling off at the end of the term. So, Katie, did you want to make any comments about the candidates, or should I go ahead and call them?
No, I would like to. First of all, I think that you're both excellent in the council, either one of you, and then eventually the other one of you will run and be on the council, and the council will be the better for it. John, I don't know you as well, but I have liked you. And our dogs passing on the street, you're always very pleasant and cordial. And I was impressed with your credentials that you spoke of just now. I think that it would be a really good addition. Formally, I knew Andrew better. As has been mentioned, there was a very unfortunate set-to on a committee that I was running that became extremely unpleasant. And it had to do with a kind of aggressivity that I found very off-putting. For that reason, I would, I am swayed to prefer to vote for you, John, rather than spend my next year feeling uneasy that there'll be another confrontation that is very unpleasant. Even though Andrew, I'm sure, would bring a lot to the council with his financial expertise, and I'm sure that you would welcome help with that, Bryce, but this has been a wonderful experience for me, being on this council, working with everyone and working with the staff. And the goal, while we've differed occasionally, the goal has always been to pull together as best we could. And that's been very pleasant.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So I'll just be brief, and so we can go ahead and move on to a motion. I am being fully transparent. I worked with Andrew on the Animal Advisory Committee. I'm aware of some of the conflict that occurred, and we have had subsequently some really good discussions. And I, in fact, encouraged him to put his name in the hat for the city council. But John, I haven't met you, and I'm very intrigued by also your experience in land trust and working with tribal entities, which is a big part of what we do on the council. And I'm also mindful that we could end up with a 2-2 split here in the vote. And so I may move in a different direction, and please understand, both of you, that I have the utmost respect for both of you and coming forward, and we will get you on the council sooner or later, as Bryce mentioned. All right, so with all that, you can tell it's very difficult because you're our neighbors and friends, and we want to be respectful in this process. All right, so I am going to ask Jack Tuttle to start the motion, because I started with you, and if you would like to move to
Yeah, again, this is really hard because I do like both of you guys a lot, and I think both of you would bring a lot to this council. Andrew, I know that you would be a very strong player on this council, and I would love for you to sit next to us. But I'm going to make a motion to appoint John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And is there a second for John? Second. Katie, all those in favor? I'm going to throw my name in the hat to 3-1. Okay, I believe that's the only motion. John, thank you for joining us on the council. Andrew, thank you for you joined in the reindeer games as well and is helping a lot on the animal advisory committee. All right, we have the last discussion topic for tonight, which is a very good and comprehensive staff activity report that Gabe put together. Council, I guess I'll ask, do you need a 3-minute stretch break or shall we go ahead and just plow ahead? Okay. All right, we're going to plow ahead if you're comfortable, Gabe, and I'll turn it over to you.
I am, thank you. You know, I put all this down in paper because I think it keeps us accountable for what we will and what the council is expecting of us. You know, from a bird's eye view, but also down to the smaller granule items, which I know I'm guessing Mayor Pro Tem Bryce Kenny appreciates. So that said, I don't want to get too deep into reciting everything. I just want to kind of highlight a few of these things because, again, it's all in the packet. It kind of gives us a day-to-day snapshot, or not a day-to-day, but a summarized snapshot of the activity and our finger on the pulse for the month. By category of department, starting with administration, which I would summarize as a month dedicated to catching up and preparing for the next wave. I think, you know, we all can understand, former manager Joe Tagliavashi left the city in pretty good hands. And we're experiencing that lull now. Not saying that we don't have bigger picture items that we are not focused on, because we are, but it's a really nice time to catch our breath. Handle a lot of housekeeping items, for instance, finance. If we're talking the spirit of finance, we had, with your action tonight on the consent agenda, we approved. We closed the fiscal year prior, actually should say 2024, and we're beginning now already to kick off the recent fiscal year that has passed, June 30th, and the audit for that. We also did the annual street report. So we did an audit. We had the state controller's office. We contracted the state controller's office to audit every penny and every dollar that we spend of our transportation loans, gas tax, TVA, and various funding sources that we receive from Caltrans. What else? We were able to mail the right-of-way application that was requested of us in lieu of the boardwalk agreement that we had attempted to have the Trinidad Rancheria approve, but they recommended that we go through a different process. We accomplished that goal. We also have had several meetings, and we believe we have a very clear path forward for the 2 residences outside the city limits on Mill Creek Lane that have requested water service. It's a huge accomplishment. As far as finance, again, the annual street report, the upcoming audit engagement, which will most likely begin, I think, next month in November, with putting together the documents into last year's financial statements. Public Works has been keeping and maintaining their routine and priority. Preparing for the winter rains. We've had a nice splash of rain that seemed like it came a little early this year. So making sure that all the gutters, stormwater system has been inspected has been a big priority. And also, I worked closely with them to develop a system, a format for sending informal requests for estimates from our contractors, our preferred contractors, Wallen, Hooven, and GRS, so that they can give us bids on projects, for instance, water hookups. We've got currently 2 water hookups being requested inside the city limits. And that's, there's one on Berry Road and there's another one on Underwood. And when the city receives an estimate, the cost of that goes to the resident. The city doesn't pay for the hookup. So it's in the city's best interest and in the residents' best interest that the city does them service and justice by getting good estimates. And the estimates do range. And sometimes they range significantly. So we put together a new packet because we're anticipating up to 7 more connections into next year. 5 of them will come over there off of the new Rock development, where there's 5 proposed, which require 5 separate connections. And then also the 2 potentially on Mill Creek Lane. So this process, I don't think in my entire career here, I don't think we've done more than 1 every 5 to 7 years. So we're up to about 9 in the next year. So we developed a system so we can get these estimates out really quick, get their estimates back from the contractors. That was a highlight this month. It took a lot of work. Measure Z, we bought a new streaming current monitor. And this is for the water department. And that streaming current monitor will significantly improve the overall water quality and reliability as it calculates and maintains optimum polymer during water treatment plant process. So the higher the turbine, the more the turbine, the streaming current monitor is able to determine what that part per million is and then dose the water with the proper chemicals. And I say chemicals, it's a polymer, but that polymer and the chlorine work together to sanitize the water. And having this device, which was purchased with funds that we received through a grant award from Measure Z, which is a sticky fund, is a valuable tool for us to have in our water treatment arsenal. Let's see. The staff has been very focused on the Intertie project. If anyone's driven down West Haven Drive, the contractor's been laying a lot of pipe to connect the 2. And right now, the 2 systems have the pipeline laid along West Haven Drive to connect each system to one another. But right now, we're working on the complex part of building the technology and the hardware at our treatment to turn on and off that water in case of emergency. So that's been a big project that's currently underway. Bluffing Creek flow, we're not too worried about that now. We have a 3.22 cubic foot per second read from Todd Kramer, Pacific Watershed Associates. He was on the field on 10/10/2025, and of course we had almost an inch of rain this week. So the creek just continues to swell. Planning, Trevor Parker and I have been engaged in the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail Working Group hosted by the State Coastal Commission. And a little bit of an update is included in the staff activities report for anyone who wants a little follow up on that. Engineering, let's see. The highlight of this month, Josh Wolf, our streets and roads engineer, and I were working on he proposed the improvements for what we call the 2024 STIP project. It's a surface transportation improvement fund with funds administered through Caltrans. And the city had applied for these funds several years ago. And we have developed, GHD has developed plans to repave Main Street with a fresh surface and also improve the sidewalk that's on the south side of Main Street that's usually pretty narrow. The other side of the street has had major improvements to that sidewalk during the Safe Routes to School program back in 2000. I think it was 8-9. But the south side has bad line of sight issues when you're walking up to the intersections of those streets because of hedges and fences. And this project is going to aim to correct with a new surface for Main Street, for part of West Haven Drive, and also part of Patrick's Point Drive, a new asphalt surface with new striping, and some safety enhancements. No new bulb outs or anything like that. But we also learned that we will not be eligible for 2026 STIP funds because, and it's an every other year cycle, because the city has been receiving a lot of those funds. This project in particular, I think the estimate's around $600,000 to $800,000, and they're scheduled for next summer, but they'll be quick. But we won't have $600,000 to $800,000 to play with for a good 5 years possibly. So we're going to have to live with what we have here and use our general fund and other isolated and dedicated streets and road funds to fund any further improvements, culverts that need to be replaced, alligatoring of any surfaces of streets. You know, we're going to have to be really wise with how we use our limited amount of funds over the next 5 to 7. Bounce to future agenda topics. Future agenda topics, the one that I know we've had an underground utilities potential discussion underway. That one just keeps getting just a little bit out of my grasp every time I reach for it, but we do have some PG&E representatives that are prepared, and I think I could work with Jack. I could talk to you directly about this, but we also could bring some of this forward in the form of a report to council, hopefully in November, maybe December, to formalize it if something behind the scenes doesn't produce, a productive discussion. Been asking for this for a while. Want to follow through with that as well.
Hey guys, just one.
Go for it.
I noticed the camera for those online is pointing at me when Gabe is talking. I don't know if you can. I just think for people online, it will help to see your face with your.
I wasn't even looking, but that's a really good.
I feel sorry for
people
watching the video after the fact, and it's just like me for an hour and a half. Try to be animated over here, but
no, that's totally fine. I'm glad you got that. I can't stop this. I think cameras are totally mobile.
I think they'll enjoy seeing your shining face for a while.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for indulging me.
Yeah, and last but not least, I'll touch on the future agenda topics, which I think we've all been kind of anticipating at some point, which is the Humboldt Bay Municipal RFP. Your council made a motion in July to direct staff to pursue comparative analysis feasibility study. I won't go into those details about that exact motion, but I'm picking up the ball on that. I've been gathering information from various sources. Each of our staff members, as identified in the staff activities report, the city planner, the grant administrator, our city engineer, and myself, we've all been delegated tasks to kind of go out, assemble information, and then come back with, let's see, how could I say it? To begin developing materials to support the next phase of discussion that will support carrying out the motion in the most efficient manner. So what we're learning throughout this process of gathering information is that, as much as we want to craft a motion to direct staff to do something, there are some things out there, some resources, some information that we're gathering that might mean we need to come back to you for further guidance. And I think that was also something that was requested in the RFP, is that we were to bring that back to the council for final review and seek grant money to fund. So right now we're actually going out on the hunt for developing our resources that are going to help us re-engage and reframe this discussion for you. I don't have an anticipated date yet, but I don't know if the holidays are good to bring up this discussion. I think we want to do it mindfully. Maybe it is a good time to bring the discussion up. But if we want to be inclusive, I would like to see it wrapped up by the end of the year so we have better direction. But I think that the staff activities section of this agenda item would be the best place to start parking some of this information so you can see how this is formulated on scenes, as opposed to just thinking that it just got lost in the shuffle, because it's definitely not lost. Let's see, I touched on a couple of the grant projects underway, the Intertie, the per capita Parks and Rec, which we just sent information to the BIA as part of the right-of-way permission project. that we need before we could even touch that boardwalk. But I've also had some very interesting conversations with the transportation director at the Trinidad Rancheria that remains funding on their end. Actually, is their project that they may be able to utilize, and then maybe free up some of this per capita funding for some other projects that we would like to do, such as the park. So we're looking at some different options here of partnering with our friends Trinidad Rancheria. Town hall rot and repair window project was scheduled for the 29th to 13th. Then it was scheduled to start on the 13th, but now we're looking at the 20th. And it was due to rain, due to staffing at Adams Commercial General. And I just got an email today saying that they will be here on the 20th, their anticipated new start date, and they will have construction done within a week. So all these windows and any rot repair in this building could potentially be done within a week, because I think they really want to throw a large staff at, not just, two people working.
I was standing out there looking at the building, and there's a lot of rust too. I have a feeling that we should be prepared for a little bit of a potentially a budget overrun when we get to the painting part, because there's the gutters don't look like they're in great shape, for example. So we could, how it is when you do most projects. It's like you're just gonna paint, and then the next thing you know, you're replacing the gutters and everything else. So anyway,
once we dive into it, you're not going to have rust. You're not going to want a bunch of rusty gutters in this new and improved town hall of the building, right? So we'll keep that in mind. So last in the staff activities, I included a staff report that Trevor Parker included, and that has some information about some of the questions, accusations, and sort of fear that was brought up at the July meeting. One of Trevor's assignments was to kind of go out and create to find some answers and maybe even do a little myth busting. So there's a staff report included in this packet for that. And again, all these things are going to come back to the council at some point.
Yeah, I was going to
not take time for deliberate and discuss.
Yeah, when we have it as an agenda item, then this will be good reference material.
But we always hear about how, we didn't have enough time to see. So I was kind of suggesting, hey, let's be just really transparent about where we're going with these processes and what we're doing with the city's time, energy, and money behind the scenes. And I thought it would be nice to plant these seeds, in advance, so that, as we formulate our discussion and framework for where we're going with this agenda item, we'll be, be able to trace the steps of how we created this framework. And also there's a really nice report done by Angela Cather in there that which was her step in this process, was to determine what kind of grant funding may be out there to support this RFP or comparative analysis. And she does in fact report on that funding sources that are available, which there's no guarantees, but we are finding a path forward in that regard.
Good to hear.
So with that said, I think I'm just going to turn it back. If you have any questions, otherwise we'll just keep plugging away.
Right, questions? Okay.
Great report.
Yeah.
This first was great to learn about the water automatic polymer measuring device. Noel would be proud of that.
He would be proud.
Imagine that.
Yeah, that if that failed, and we had a unit that was in there for about, I think I want to say it was better part about 10 or 15 years old. And if that failed, it would be catastrophic for our system. So having this, I think, if anybody knows anyone with the county, the Board of Supervisors, Madrone, whoever may have supported this Measure Z award, thank them.
Yeah.
So I have curiosity on the sidewalk widening on the south side of Main Street. Was the idea that the street would be a little narrower? Or?
Yeah, the lane width right now is currently much larger, greater than it needs to be. Yeah. I think the lane width average is 8 feet, but then with an additional, right now it's It's exceptionally wide there. So we're only talking about another foot, I believe. It's kind of minimal. But it makes a huge difference when you're walking with two people passing each other.
I walk that every day, and every day I go into the street.
Right. Yeah, especially with the driveway interfacing. There's a couple of driveway conforms that are going to be redeveloped to look a lot like the one down at the end of.
Where is it going to be?
The south side of Edwards. No, I'm sorry, south side of Maine.
Between Ocean and the corner.
The entire part of Main Street.
Whole thing, all the way across.
So the driveway conforms are also going to include drainage underneath, so that water's not coming into the sidewalk as it's moving down towards our storm drain interceptors. Be interfacing with any of that water, because it's going to be almost exactly the same as the one down here by the side of bed and breakfast. I think the driveway that goes up there. So these enhancements will narrow that road a little bit, but you may not even notice it. And then while we're doing this is a great opportunity to engage with the residents on that street who have, wall fences, hedges, to say, hey, the city's making a huge investment in the safety of the street, and we're gonna try to work together to get those hedges and things cut back.
The one that was bugging me did get cut back.
Yeah, well, that one was growing very far out, but we're even talking about doing some requesting some partnership and creating some structure. I don't know what it's going to be, what it's going to look like. I think you and I, Bryce, had that conversation about prior owners making arrangements with the city to cut it back, but then new owners come and then it just kind of continues to grow out. So you walk there, I bike that way a lot of times. I'll get off the street on the sidewalk and you just don't know who's going to come out of those. Ocean Avenue, the driveways are all blind. So just as Mr. Waskowitz was mentioning how he likes how safe town is, but this is one aspect that they improved.
Speaking of streets, you notice the yellow crosswalking is peeling off the street at what is it, West and
I
Trinidad?
noticed that it is.
Okay, you know about it.
Perfect.
All right, are there questions or comments from the public on tonight's staff report? Ms. Thompson? Sure.
I just wanted to give a big thanks to Gabe and Angela and Trevor for their staff report. I learned a lot from it, and I really appreciate the, first of all, I appreciate the approach on the feasibility study and then informing all of us of the process. And then what Angela, I learned a lot from what you did, Angela, with the grant, and then how we do kind of tick all the boxes at being at-risk plan. I'm sorry, I'm just really tired right now. My doggy's been sick, so I'm just like sleep deprived. But and I mentioned this to you before too, Gabe. I just really appreciate that you're taking all this time to do really a comprehensive staff report. And then I'm just going to keep all of this because this is going to really build as we get closer to the feasibility study, and then finding out all the players that are involved too. So, and that the fact that you're all networking, it's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, public comments on the staff report? All right. I'm going to bring it back to the council then. Thanks again, Gabe. I thought it was a great report too. Future agenda items, I think I teed up the December meeting date for next. And anything else anybody top of mind right now wants to add?
I brought it up last time. I'm still, every time I walk down the street and there's nobody on the street, it's like our census in town is so minimal between the holiday houses and the STRs. It's like empty house after empty house, and I hate it. I want peoples.
So is your request to
well, I think
talk about the STR policy?
Yeah, I think that would be probably the way to go.
Okay, so then there might be a conversation about whether or not to about the STR committee, because we had an STR committee that responds that when we capped our, they did all the work on the STRs, and there's a whole lot of history, we'll just add that. So we'll add this on the list of things that we'll discuss in the agenda review meeting and figure out what a good approach would be. Okay, other topics? Anybody else? You know where to find us.
Yeah.
So, okay, meeting adjourned.
Thanks one and all, by the way.
Hi, thanks.
Welcome.